what I tried to point out in terms of my seminars and what you will hear later on in this uh, presentation is that the odds, the probability of producing an individual that's exactly like you, in fact, even producing an individual that isn't like you, even any other individual on the planet. There's what we have, almost 6 billion of us now, maybe, plus or minus, the odds of that are very, 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 very small. I mean, really small. Just to make the first amino acid is already a very improbable game. So it seems to me that to bank everything on, well, it just happened and it's just, pure luck that we're here is a little bit idiotic. It seems to me that's the easy way out. One, I think, needs to look for purpose in life, and one has to sense that because one's here, that there is a purpose. And if you find that your life is not fulfilled by any purpose, then you need to go deeper into it. And I would suggest go to this hidden being inside of you to find that purpose. So here's part one. What does quantum physics do for me? So we're going to discuss how it is that we have come to be in the particular way of thinking that we presently are in. This way of thinking has developed over a long period of time. It's not just something which has come on from just the movie, What the Bleep Do We Know, or The Secret. Okay, in part two, this is where we're going to be doing more experimentation. This is where you're going to be doing experimental quantum physics, where you're going to explore something. I'm not going to tell you what that is yet, but you might get a hint. We're going to be exploring something very deep. And this exploration is going to lead us to a new discovery of the secret of the secret. Who you are. I want to take you back to an ancient time. I call this the time of the ancient alchemists. And these first alchemists were not what we normally think of when the term alchemy arises. And I'll explain that in a moment. But really, it takes us back to ancient Egypt. Because alchemia is an Egyptian word which actually means the land of the pharaohs, or the Egyptian land. Most of us, when we think of alchemy, we think of a scene something like the one you see on the screen. A bunch of people engaged in experimentation, trying to figure out what is going on, what's the nature of reality. Usually they're melting some base metals to turn it into gold. They're doing all these things that smell bad. That's not quite what alchemy really refers to. What it refers to is transformation. And what is being transformed is not necessarily this physical stuff, but something else. And that is the subject of our inquiry today. So, let me take you back into that time of ancient Egypt and remind you of how this was thought about in the ancient alchemical point of view. So the ancient alchemists had this view: heaven above, heaven below. A recognition of the outer world and the world beyond their immediate sensory world. Stars above, stars below. Wait a minute. What do they mean, stars below?
Stars above, yeah, I see the stars. But stars below, what could that mean? All that is above also is below. Grasp this thought and take joy in it. Rejoice in it. Enjoy it, in other words. What are they telling us? What are these alchemists referring to? What they're referring to is part of the secret. What they're referring to is that everything that you see in the world out there is also taking place in you and you and you. And even you, even if you can't even hear me, it's still taking place in you. That's what quantum physics has brought us to, this new but extremely old vision, which dates back 5,000 years to the ancient view that you see on your screen. As you notice, as you watch those slides fade and change, in fact, I'll do that again, so that you can see what I want you to notice about the change as you watch the scene change is that we're looking at a transformation as we see. First we see the phases of sun and moon over the pyramids. And now we see that the sun is moving across the sky. That's a phase of the sun. Get this word phase in your mind. Now it's gone all the way to the netherworld, to the underside of the universe, so to speak. And now we're in the night phase. And if we go on, suddenly the sun will rise again. The rebirth. All of the Egyptian mythology is based upon death and rebirth. Annihilation and creation. The beginning and the end, giving back to the beginning and the end, and on it goes. As above, so below. As within, so without.
Yes. Let me see if I can make it clear what I mean by the eye and the observer. Sometimes I tend to use them to be the same thing. Sometimes I mean something separate. Here is the way we presently understand it. And now I'm using some mystical thinking, some ancient thinking from spiritual teachings, from Buddhism, from Hinduism, from Kabbalah, even I would suppose even in the Christian Bible, but I can't specifically point out where these things are to be found. But you, if you study religion or have a particular spirituality, you will find something similar to this. The basic idea is that there is a single unity, a oneness, a unity of which we're all composed. Now, it is impossible. It seems simple. You say unity, everybody should think they know what that means. But if you're thinking that something is unity, then you already are in duality, because you're separated from that which you think is unity and said, oh, that's unity. Oh, well, if that's unity, then where are you? Well, I must be outside of it because I'm thinking it. You have to be in it to be unity, and nobody can think of it. It's like a fish trying to imagine the water in which it swims. You just can't see it. It's part of you already. So that unity consciousness, because it's so unthinkable, is nevertheless the fundamental ground of being out of which everything arises. And this is evident to me, not only from spirituality, but it's also evident to me from the quantum physical understanding of how the universe comes into being. It can't just come into being through mechanical means. We've tried. Believe me, physicists are looking for all the mechanical ways they could possibly seek to find a mechanical means by which God could be left out of the equation. And we haven't been able to do it. Somewhere along the line, a miracle has to happen. And it's disturbing because science doesn't want miracles. Science wants to have everything explained in terms of objective fact. There is something unobjective or subjective about the nature of reality. Now, I'm not the only one that knows this or brings this up or thinks about it. A number of great minds, and I don't consider myself to be a great mind, but a number of great minds have seen this or realized it. One of my favorites to talk about is a physicist whose name is Wolfgang Pauli. Now, Pauli was an Austrian-German physicist, born around 1900, died at the age of 59. Very young man. Very brilliant, and almost like a number mystic, although he would never say that about himself. He was rigid in a certain sense, but very imaginative. By the time he reached his 40s, he realized that something was missing in his life, and he began to have these dreams. They were very mystical, magical dreams, and they're wonderful stories. It would take me more time than we have to go into them. But in these, he realized that what was missing was the spiritual understanding. He realized that something other than the physical was necessary in order to even have a physical. So this is Wolfgang Pauli, who's a Nobel Prize in theoretical physics. Einstein even speaks about God, maybe loosely, but nevertheless, the deeper you go into this, the more you begin to uncover that there's got to be something that I don't see in the equations. And in quantum physics, this became extremely evident and very disturbing to all the quantum physicists when they first discovered it, is that somehow observation, looking at something, the means by which you go about looking at something, actually affects the thing being looked at. Now, some people think it means looking at something makes a force that pushes it or pulls it or something. No. No, because what we're dealing with at this level in quantum physics is not me, an observer, looking at it, a thing. It's something called an observer, which I have no idea even what it is, interacting with something which is not a thing yet. It's not a no thing, but it's not a thing. What it is a field of possibility. And that field of possibility is extremely real, because without it, no atom could even exist. All atoms would collapse. All electrons will spiral into the nucleus of the atoms in which they partake, and there would be no such thing as atoms. If that would happen to you right now, you would shrink down to be about the size of an amoeba sitting on the chair, if all your atoms were to shrink in size like that. So this is not something that happens where there's space. What is that space? That space is a field of probability, field of possibility that represents where all the electronicness of your body resides. And it's in the electronicness, the electrons bubbling around inside of you, that the experience of life is really taking place. Those electrons are, it's like an action show, and giving off light and absorbing light, and that all that dance is what we experience as life. But when you observe, and you observe by looking at a single electron, many electrons, and you observe by looking at where they are or how they're moving, you have choices, you affect the patterns which take place. In your own nervous system right now, there are neurons. And if you look at what these neurons are doing, they have an inner part and an outer part, an inner cellular and an exterior cellular part. And there are ions which pass back and forth from the inside to the outside. Sodium and potassium ions are the main ones. There are other ones too. And these passages of these ions in and out produce an electrical signal which travels around up the neuron into your brain or wherever it goes, or down your arm into your leg, giving you the sensation of your toe or your arm or whatever right now as I'm moving around. Well, these patterns are going on. These patterns are constantly changing because these ions are moving backwards and forwards. But they're passing through little gateways. We call them protein gates. And these gates don't stay open all the time. They're like little mouths. They open, close, open, close, open and close, open and close. And these things are they're molecules. They're pretty heavy molecules, but they're quantum. In other words, we don't exactly know whether they're open or whether they're closed. They're in the state of being both open and closed at the same time until observation takes place. And when that occurs, it changes the patterning. So as you, as an observer, start to observe the things around you, you are affecting these gate molecules of your neurons, affecting what you think, how you smell, what you sense, how you intuit it, what you feel. All that is being controlled by the various movements of these gate molecules, which are under your control. You're not controlling them individually, but you have patterns which you've set up, which change according to what's happening. One of the big mysteries about the body, that's fantastic really, is that if you look at neural conduction, whether it's you're hearing a song, smelling a rose, or tasting an enchilada, whatever you're doing, if you watch the neurons that are moving and you watch the electrical signals that are firing, they are exactly the same. They don't look any different. More intense, you get less intense. How often they just is the how hard you're pressing, how bright the light is, etc. But the form looks identical. But somehow, in that difference of form, somehow in there, something is magical, because what makes that form the smell of a rose or the color yellow? I mean, something made that occur. That's where the magic is. How does that happen? How does that happen? It's got to be in the quantum mechanics. It's got to be in the observer effect. And that's why in my seminars, and even on this presentation that you will be seeing at home, getting in touch with the fact that there is an observer inside of you, and that's how transformation and change takes place, in the same way that you can change from a color yellow to the taste of an enchilada. There's a different observer acting. The observer that tastes an enchilada is not the same observer that sees the color yellow. How many observers are there in you? Approximately an infinite number. If you try to label each one, there's the one that observes yellow. There's the one that observes yellow-orange. There's the one that hears the song. There's the one that hears a note of the song. There's one that tastes a strawberry. There's one that tastes a raspberry. They're not the same. You all feel that they're the same because we integrate these experiences and we put them all together. And that is the way we normally process the world. We all think I'm just a human being feeling the world out, and nothing magical about it. Everything's magical about it.
It's like music. Vibration is something which la-dee-da. It vibrates as a tune. That vibration is within you as it is without you as well. Now, the ancient Greeks came on the scene after the Egyptians, and they decided to do something about this vibration. They decided to call it something. They called it the fifth, that's number 5, the fifth essence. The English word for that, I don't know what it is in Spanish, is quintessence. This vibration. But there were the other 4 essences that they were interested in. According to Aristotle, these 4 essences were earth, air, fire, and water. Now you see this guy right here who's got this club? Who is he? That's you. That's humankind. dealing with fire. See this God here holds fire? See this next one right here? He's got wind, air. And see this one over here? He's throwing water on him. And see this one right here? He's got a great big mound of earth that he's going to throw at him. And see our poor fellow here with the club? Earth, air, fire, and water. I will defeat you. You're not going to get me. Meanwhile, there's this something down here. Who's this little girl? She's the representative of the quintessence, the fifth essence, the vibrational essence, which says, don't worry about a thing. No worries, no problemas. Because you are fundamentally not of that. Earth, our mother, the basis of everything. Yet, earth, air, fire, and water. I better hold out my club. I better conquer the earth. Gotta conquer it. Because I'm afraid. Why am I so afraid? What's bothering me? What am I afraid of? Earth, one of the essences, revolving, rotating, reminding us of the vibrational spirit, the essence, everything moving. Then there's air. To remind us that there's air, we have the birds which move through the air. Another essence. But wind can come and blow me down, and I'm frightened. I'm afraid. And then there's fire. Oh, it's magnificent. Warms me up, heats my house, but it can also scorch me and burn me, and I'm afraid of fire. Something to fear. Another essence. It's out there, gonna get me. And then, of course, there's water. Our bodies are 65 to 67% water. This thing you call your brain, 85% of it is H2O, all water. So you are mostly, at least in your thinking ability and your essences, you'll have a lot of water going on inside of you. Our experiences, our out there experiences, our experiences of the world that we exist in, consist of changes, transformations. And the Greeks saw a way to deal with this. Always remember that the Greeks tried to rationalize, to make things objective. They weren't dealing with the person anymore because that person is already quaking in fear. What am I going to do? What am I going to do? What am I going to do? Okay, now I'm going to take you a little bit deeper into this sort of quantum physics of your inner world for a moment. Here we have earth, air, and they are like opposites, polar opposites of each other. That's why they're on opposite sides of the diamond, okay? Earth and air are like polar opposites. So are fire and water, like polar opposites of each other. The Greeks recognized that through these elements, something inside of you could take place. And what they recognized was that various combinations of these elements gave rise to experiences that you're having. Remember the drawing of the guy with the club. I'm afraid, I'm afraid, I'm afraid. Remember that drawing. The Greeks learned, they said, wait a minute, what are you afraid of? What are you afraid of? And they began to sense that of these elements, we should map out. We should find out how our fear, how our experiences arise in the first place. Now, I want you to notice something about these things. First of all, The objective qualities, the so-called out there, as above, so below, as within, so without. The objective out there qualities that we're talking about are the things we call space, time, energy, motion. All, and I mean absolutely all, everything in physics, whether it's quantum physics or classical physics or electromagnetism physics, whatever kind of physics you're talking about, we only deal with those four qualities. And those four qualities that we're talking about, the objective world, are time, space, motion, and energy. But, if it wasn't for our internal qualities of intuiting, thinking, sensing, and feeling, we would have no idea that there even was an out there world. Now in English, we can put these things on a kind of a scale. See my hand? My first finger, I call that feeling, because F, feeling, okay? Feeling. My second finger, I call intuiting, feeling and intuiting. My third finger, I call sensing. My fourth finger, I call thinking. Feeling, intuiting, sensing, thinking. These are the four fingers, F-I-S-T. F-I-S-T is an English word, says fist. So this is a reminder, in English anyway. I don't know what these words are in Spanish. But there's one thing missing. What about this guy? El Gordito or something you call it, I don't know. What about him? What about it? What is this? This is the one, this is the most important one, because this is the one that senses or feels or thinks. This is the one that picks up on all the rest. This thumb is the representative of your expression of you in the world. This is your ego, your I, your yo. Yo soy, yo soy, yo soy, yo soy, I am, I am, I am, I am. This is where that comes from. And what are you? It's what I feel, what I intuit, what I sense, what I think. Okay, so remember these things, and also remember the following things, that these are complementary to each other. Thinking is complementary to feeling. Intuiting is complementary to sensing. What do I mean? I mean they're polar opposites of each other, which means that if you are strongly intuitive, you're not so strong sensing. If you're strongly sensing, you're not so strongly intuitive. If you're strongly feeling, you're not so strongly thinking. And vice versa. This complementarity is a very important part of the physical world. Not only because of these functions, but because they indicate to us in quantum physics how it is that through the actions of my observation of the world, I can change the world. We're going to come to that. We're coming to that. I'm giving you some of the groundwork just so that you have some vocabulary to deal with these concepts. Why, oh why is a universe made in this seemingly crazy way, where what's out, what's above is also below, what's in is also without, as this Escher drawing seems to indicate? The man is looking at a painting, which is also the reality in which he lives. Look at the painting for a while. I know you guys all know about earth, air, fire, and water. I mean, God, you live in the world. You know about that stuff. And you know that you feel, you think, you intuit, you sense. You know you can do that. There's one thing missing in all of that. Who is it that's doing all that? Am I my body? Am I my soul? Am I myself? Who am I? How do you say it? ¿Quién soy yo? ¿Quién soy yo? Who am I? Okay, quantum physics indeed plays a big role in all this. So let's start. We're going down, we're going in. We're going to find out what you are made of at the deepest level. Now, when we look at this deep level of the simplest element, which is so basic that it only consists of a single nucleus, which is called a proton. We're going to even look at what it's made of in a moment. And surrounding it is something we call one single electron, a particle of negative charge, minus charge, proton, a particle of positive charge. When we look at just that simple combination of these two very basic things, something rather strange takes place. First of all, let me tell you about the size. If I could take that atom of hydrogen and blow it up so it was as big as, what's the biggest bullfighting stadium in Mexico City? DF. What is it called? You know the name of it. If I could blow that atom up to be as big as that stadium where you go to watch El Toro and El Matador, when you go there, the nucleus, the proton, that single center part of that atom, would be as big as the tip of El Toro's horn. If the atom were as big as the whole, what do you call it? You don't call it a stadium. You call it a arena, what? Plaza. If I were to make it as big as the whole plaza, the proton, the single positive particle in the center of that will be as big as the tip of El Toro's horn. Can you get how the size, what a difference there is? But wait a minute, what's all that? What about all this orangey stuff? What's all this stuff here? And this yellow, what's going on here? That is that single one electron, but that electron is not behaving itself like a good little boy. No, that single electron is filling the whole space. It's filling the whole space. It's not locating itself to be at one point at one time. In fact, for it, space and time are almost non-existent. They're almost. What is it doing filling that whole space? It's vibrating. It's humming. It's singing a song. It's vibrating. It's like a lively thing. Very high frequency vibration. Not only that, but it can change its tune. Just with a slight little adjustment, it can get excited. This is what it looks like when it's excited. Just a little bit of excitation. Suddenly, it creates a space in which it no longer goes. You see this ring right here around it, the black ring? That's where that electron doesn't go. It says, I will not go there. My vibrations are such that there is no way for me to go in that circle. Though actually it's not a circle. This is a spherical thing. So what you're looking at is a sphere of nothingness surrounding. Not only can it do that, but it can get even more excited. It can go into two spaces. It can even get more excited. It can even begin to divide north from south. It can get more excited. It can begin to divide north from south and have a ring around it, like the ring that surrounds Mexico City. Not only that, we can do this. How many different ways can it appear? This single little tiny little hydrogen atom, the number of ways that it can appear is infinite. This is one atom, and it already has the power to have infinite possibilities. This is one atom. Now, you know how many atoms you're made of? Don't ask. Lots. What I'm trying to tell you is that the power, the potential for transformation of your life is vast, much vaster than you presently could even conceive of or believe. And this is what I'm trying to do here by explaining to you the simplest thing that I can explain using quantum physics, which is the simplest atom in all of existence, the hydrogen atom. But there's more. Suppose I go into the hydrogen atom and I go into the very nucleus of the hydrogen atom, that little proton. What happens in there is even more magical. What happens is that single proton consists of 3 separate particles called quarks. And they are so hard to see, and they are almost non-existent. They have very little mass, but surrounding that field, well, these are called antiquarks, by the way. We'll come to those in a moment. Surrounding that is something we call the gluon field. Gluons are light that is captured by the nucleus. It's very intense light. It's quite bright, very energetic. It's so energetic that it's capable of changing itself into matter. It's got that much energy. And there are photons. And let me show you what that dance, that Big Bang looks like around you. This is a picture of what's going on inside the nucleus of you. Going deeper, we even see the following kind of processes going on. Inside of you, matter, this gluon field, is beginning to try to form something from nothing. And so it makes what are called instantons, things which pop into existence, trying to make it, popping out of existence. Next moment, popping into existence. This is the dance within every nucleus of every atom, every proton, every neutron of every atom within your body. This is the Big Bang within you.
Many people wonder, since I've been in a book and a movie called The Secret, about something called the law of attraction. Well, let me try to break it down as simply as I can. First of all, the law of attraction as it is popularly understood is not a law of science. It's more something metaphysical. It's a metaphor. If we look at where attraction comes from the point of view of physics, what we're looking at is how one object can influence another. And it can do so in one of 2 ways. It either can attract it or it can repulse it. And we need both attraction and repulsion in the universe. Otherwise, everything would just glomp together one great big messy gooey substance. In fact, we may look at the Big Bang of the universe as being a time before there was anything, when everything tried to get away from that and actually repelled and repulsed and escaped and let me out of here kind of stuff. That's what the Big Bang is. So we need repulsion, because in repulsion we begin to feel senses of separation, and separation has both good points and bad points. One is you feel separated, you feel identified as an entity. That's the good point because you now feel some empowerment as a self or as an individual. But on the other hand, you feel alone and isolated. You're no longer in the glomp. You're no longer all together. So we need both attraction and repulsion. What is commonly thought of attraction is that if you somehow have a desire for something, that the universe will suddenly rush into to you and give you everything you desire. It doesn't work that way. The universe simply doesn't care. It has no interest in rushing into your desires, okay? Because it is indifferent to that, it gives you the power to yourself. It empowers you to manifest your desires by the actions you take in the universe. So one of the great secrets beyond the secret is that you have a power that you can touch on if you understand how to use it. In order to contact this, in order to get into it, you do this by carrying out a question. You carry out a process of questioning. What you don't do is answer the question. When you are in a situation that arises, and that situation calls for you to take action, you at that moment will be given the opportunity from this place, whatever you want to call it, this mind, or whatever it is, to ask this question. The question is, who is taking this action? You don't answer, but the minute you ask the question, it changes the action you're about to take. That's how you come to realize this presence. You can't realize it by praying. You can't realize it because in typical religions, oh, help me, you pray to something outside of yourself. That isn't it. It's in you. It's part of you. And that was, this is in Christian theology, this is in Buddhist theology, it's in all of them. But people miss the point because they identify with whatever conditions they're in. It's easy to do because, let's say you're poor and you're hungry. It's very hard not to identify with being poor and hungry. And because so many of us are poor and hungry, we're in a fix. Because out of poverty and hunger comes violence. It's as natural as you can expect. Because when you're poor and you're hungry, you've got nothing to turn to. So we have to understand that. And that's why compassion and understanding is something each human being must do by, if you can't do anything else, you can at least ask yourself, who is taking this action? Not necessarily answering it, but asking it.
So this is the Big Bang within you. This is a picture of a simple quark and an antiquark, and they make up what is called a meson, a fundamental particle. And when you try to pull them apart, what happens is that energy seems to rush in, which keeps them glued together. Here is a proton made up of 3 quarks, and when you try to pull those apart, energy seems to rush in, which fuses them back together. So we can't get separate quarks from each other. We can't separate them out. This is the gluon field. Not only that, but each of those quarks is very light in weight. They're very, very light in weight. But the gluon field gives it mass. In other words, material is forming and unforming constantly going on inside of you. You are a hotbed of matter forming and disappearing. Now, I'm going to tell you a little story here. there's a search going on to find out what is the fundamental particle. But I want to show you in this little story how a quark, how it can suddenly get heavier, how it can gain mass. So what I want you to think of now is that the field, this called the gluon field, is a room filled with scientists. And what are the scientists doing? They're all talking to each other. Yakety, 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 yakety. All random. You know, what did you do? You know, like that. Okay? And then, what happens is that this guy makes an announcement. He says, Einstein is coming into the room. Einstein is coming into the room. And when he comes into the room, all of the other scientists go, whoa! We better, whoa! So what happens? They gather around him, and he can hardly move because there's so many people around. Einstein has now gotten massive. He's gotten all the mass of the gluons attaching himself to him. He himself wasn't that massive to begin with, but now he weighs about 10 tons because all these other guys are around him, and he can hardly move at all. That's how energy becomes matter through an influx of something we're just beginning to see how it works, called information. Einstein's coming. Now, something else happens. Einstein's gone. They're back to their cocktails and blabbing, and suddenly somebody sticks their head in the room and says, Isaac Newton is coming. Newton, we thought he was dead. He's really coming? Isaac Newton is coming. He's been reborn. Oh my God. Oh my God. Whoa. Just the rumor, the information, and look what happens. There is no Newton. But that little gathering has suddenly made mass. And that gathering of gluons, that gathering, which is only gathered because somebody said something, some information was given to the field, makes matter come into existence as something matter, something material. Now, what has this got to do with anything? Everything. I mean, everything. All the matter in the world is made from information. Now you may wonder, what the heck is that all about? What does that mean? Everything is made of information. I'm made of information? What does that mean? Well, we need to find out. You are essentially, first of all, what is information? Information is stuff of the mind. It's mind stuff. I don't know what that means, but call it mind stuff. It's a mixed metaphor. It's a mixed bag. I don't know what a mind stuff looks like. I know what stuff looks like. I know what it means when I'm stuffed. Oh boy, my stuff. I know what that means. But mind stuff? Can I stuff my head with stuff like I stuff my belly with stuff? No. But it's mind stuff. It's something we call it something, but we don't really know what it is. Mind stuff. You're made of that stuff, even though we don't know what it is. If I'm mind stuff, if I'm made of mind stuff, if I am that stuff, then where in all heavens am I to be found? Am I to be found in my atoms, in my body, in my brain? Where am I? Well, the answer seems to be none of the above. And that's really going to cause some eyebrows raising. What do you mean, none of the above? You're in something we give a name to. I don't know how to call it. I call it the unrealm, the non-realm, the realm of no existence. You live there. I live there. We all live in that realm. All of this, which seems very solid and very real, and my God, turns out that when you look at it from this level, it's not so real as it appears. And as strange as that thought may occur, if we begin to entertain that idea that we are not so real as we appear, we move to a place of power that we've never felt before. To become less powerful is simply to stay within the realm of the material world. You may get to move a couple things around, but you're losing power. When you go to this more abstract unrealm, this is where your true power lies, because this is where you come from. This is who you are. But we have to discover that. We just don't listen to me and tell you that. You got to discover that for yourself. You got to find that out. Otherwise, it's just talk. And talk is cheap. It's walking the talk, walking your talking. That's difficult to do.
Sometimes when I give presentations, I invent concepts. They just spring to my head. I don't know where they come from. Actually, I do, but I can't give a name to it. I invented something called an interest matrix. Many of you have seen maybe the movie called The Matrix. It was a movie made in Hollywood. It had a lot of violence and typical things that Hollywood does to make movies wake people up in the audience. That's really what the reason we have violence and action in movies is to keep the audience awake. If you start talking to them too much about the metaphysics of it all, they'll be out really, they got to feel something in order to be so. But the concept of the movie was very interesting, and that is that there is an underlying reality, and that underlying reality is hidden, and the reality that we perceive of is really an illusion. And what this underlying reality was called the Matrix. So I began to think about that metaphor of the matrix. And what is a matrix? A matrix is simply a cross-hatching. This is a matrix of spaces and lines. It's a cross-hatching. It's like a checkerboard. That's a matrix, where various things are imposed on various squares of this checkerboard. So that's a matrix. What is called an interest matrix is simply the fact that when we look at the matrix, there's not just one checkerboard. There's an infinity of them. And on each board, there's a different game going on. On some games, black winning. On some games, white's winning. On some games, it's a draw. Some games, people are moving really slowly. Some games are rapidly playing. But every game is different. Your interest matrix is which board are you going to watch? Which game are you attracted to? That's your interest matrix. So this metaphor can be used to explain what interests you in life. And generally, your interest matrix arises through your desire, what it is that you want to see or have happen. And because you are able to change your perception of reality, as we talked about earlier, you can actually alter what you observe in the out there world. And the out there world has many things going on. I mean, my God, I look outside and what I see is infinitely different maybe than what you would see if you were sitting in my position. Because I have a certain way, an interest matrix that I bring to bear, which allows certain things to come through which you simply aren't even interested in. It's like a fishing net which has different size holes to let in certain fish. But the fishing net only you can either let large fish and all the small fish in, or it's more selective than that.
Okay. First of all, this is a neurophysiological model of a human being. As we understand it, we open them up, and it's an empty bird cage. There's nobody seems to be there. We need to discover our true nature, and we need to explore our experiences in life. So we need to explore these basic concepts of quantum physics in ways that we can understand through our senses, our intuitions, our feelings, and our thoughts, things that we can do right here in this room, rather than going back to school to do it. What happens is when you finally see what's going on, you begin to see that what is really happening is that the universe, this whole big shebang, does not exist independent of the mind of the observer. The universe, the whole shebang, that's a slang term, shebang. I don't know how you're going to translate that into Spanish. The whole enchilada. Enchilada toda does not exist independent of the mind of the observer. And now naturally I've just replaced one mystery with another. What do I mean by the mind of the observer? What are you talking about? Let's find out. We're going to explore this with some experiential concepts we're going to be doing shortly that will expand your knowledge of what I mean by an observer. You're going to find out how you yourself are an observer. So this is what I'm talking about. So during the seminar, we're going to be doing some experiments. Here is the very first one. Surprise, surprise. Okay. What I need right now is I need you to reach into your pocket and pull out a coin. You may have got one in your kit, I don't know, but I want you to reach in your pocket now and pull out a coin. I'm going to ask one person in the room to stand up and come up on the stage and pull out a coin. Let's make it easy. Senor, would you like to help me? Come on up here. He's going to be the experiment. You're just going to be the observers of the experiment, okay? Have you got a coin? See, okay. Flip it and you catch it. Okay, now put it on your hand like this. Okay, now stop. Don't do anything else. This is your first pregunta, your first question. All of you got to answer this question. If any one of you doesn't, the whole thing is, the experiment will fail. Are you ready for this now? Okay. What is the probability Wait a minute. You're answering. I haven't even asked the question yet. What is the probability that it's Aguila up? $50-50, right? Is 50-50. 50-50. Boy, it's a damn. I love this language. It's so musical. 50. I like it. Okay. Bueno, we're not done yet. Wait. Now watch, you got to observe now. You have to really look. If you don't observe now, you're missing everything. So watch very closely what this man's going to do. Look at the coin. Don't tell anybody what you see, but look. Okay, don't say a word. What is the probability now that Aguila up? Oh, wait a minute. I don't hear so many answers some more. Come on, what's the probability? Okay. Who says 50-50? But how can it be 50-50? He looked at it. Maestro, mathematics, bueno, very, very good. Did you hear the difference? It's either 100%, because he saw it, or it's 0%. It can't be 50-50 anymore, because he knows. In other words, knowledge changes probability. Now, if knowledge can change, what is it, by the way? Tell us. 0%. Now we all know it's 0, but he knew right away it was 0, and you knew it was different than 50-50. Thank you, Senor. You may take your seat. In the world, ordinary world of coins and flipping and so forth, this is not a big mystery. It's a little bit strange, I realize, because after all, you didn't do anything. You didn't change anything. Why should it have changed? The answer is the universe doesn't care. Doesn't care. As long as some knowledge was gained, probability must change. That's all.
Something may occur to you in all of this, and that is, here you are in a body, in a universe which has dimensions of space and time and matter and energy, and now you've discovered your purpose. And you think, okay, what am I to do next? Don't worry about anything. Once you've discovered your purpose, you and the universe are suddenly one. And let the universe take over from this point. You don't have to worry about anything. Use your power, which you now know is your act, but don't worry about anything, because now you become part of the bigger game. And the bigger game is to bring consciousness to those that are unconscious, to bring joy to those that are sad, to bring sadness to those that have never experienced it before. In other words, to bring life, not suffering, but life. A lot of suffering is simply because we're in a body, but a lot of suffering is because we tend to impose our wills on others in such a way that they suffer because of our actions. So when you become aware of this, you don't do things like that. You don't behave in what I call stupid ways. You behave in ways in which you enhance your significance in terms of what you're here to do. If you're here to become significant, to do some action which is important in your life or in other people's lives, then you must recognize that it must be important in other people's lives, not just only in yours. So you have to understand that any action that you do, which is part of this game, this universal game, this game of consciousness, has to benefit other people. It has to bring something to others.
Good question. When we observe, can we choose which possibility we will see? The answer is yes. The big thing to understand here is that you have a choice as to how to carry out your observation. See, in the film, there was an observation going on that wasn't mentioned, namely the screen where the electrons finally hit. That's being observed. If you observe in between and watch which slit, the act of observation changes the probability pattern. Remember our friend who came up on stage and flipped the coin. The act of observation did what? Change the probability. That's what you're doing here. Now, I want you to get really clear in your mind about this because this is very, very tricky. And many people tend to think that we're talking about some kind of mechanical way of doing something. We're not. What we're saying here is that your power lies in your ability to change possibilities. As a result, what you get isn't always what you might wish to get, because you're still dealing with probabilities. Tricky, we're going to go through this in greater detail coming up, but I just want you to hear the language first. In the double slit experiment, which you just saw, things are very wavy. Wavy means possibility. Marbles are probability. Waves are possibility. Marbles are probability. When things are thinging, we're in the land of probability. When things are waving, we're in the land of possibility. There's a difference between possibility and probability. And it's more than subtle, it's fundamental. Because possibilities can interfere with each other. Probabilities cannot. Possibilities can interfere with each other. That's why you got the pattern of the double slit experiment. There are places where the waves of possibility don't go. They interfere with each other. If one wave is positive, the other one's negative. So they interfered where that happened on the screen. Do you understand what I'm saying? You may not understand all the mathematical details, I realize, but you certainly understand that what's positive, that's up, and what's negative, that's down, added together can give 0. There are 3 golden rules to the game of life. I'm not talking about the ordinary game of life, but I'm talking about the game of life in which you begin to take power to affect reality. Here are these golden rules. The first one is to realize that when we're dealing with possibilities, we're dealing with that vibrational realm. Possibilities vibrate. The second possibility. I haven't taught you this yet, but we're coming to it. Squaring changes possibilities into probabilities. I'll show you what that means in a moment. Just now, hear the words. Squaring. I'll give you a hint. If I say, how much is 5 times 5? The answer is 25. Okay? Okay. If I say, how much is 4 times 4, it's whatever, 16. I don't know what that is in Spanish. That's called squaring a number. Multiplying a number by itself is called squaring, okay? Here's a trickier square. I'm going to get you on this one. How much is minus 5 times minus 5? Ooh. How many say minus something? How many say plus something? Plus what? 25, right? 25. Minus times minus is a plus. So when you square a number, whether it's a positive number or a negative number, you always get a numero positivo, a positive number, right? Okay, keep that in mind, because possibilities can be plus or minus, like the wave can be up or down. Probabilities can never be minus. They're always positive. Okay? The third rule, you have the power to choose just when you add possibilities or when you add probabilities. And the trick here is this is what's called the principle of complementarity. You can choose how. And it's the way you make these choices that you create the world that you see around you. So let me show you how squaring works. Now this is a little tricky. You see, this is a curve. It's a coordinate system of axes. How many of you remember coordinate systems in school? This is, we're now going to look at possibilities and probabilities. So here is, what do you think this is? First of all, notice that it goes plus and minus, plus and minus. It's a wave. It may be a photon, but it may not be a photon. It could be an electron. It could be anything. But it's a wave of possibility. Why is it a wave of possibility? Because it has both plus and minus. It's waving. It's going up and down. It's going positive and negative. That's the quality that waves have. That's why when they add together, they can interfere with each other. Do you understand that? You don't understand that this goes up and down? Okay, look. This is time going this way. Okay? Now, watch me. Watch my arm. It's up. It's down. It's up. It's down. My hand, now just, if you could just turn off all the lights and there was just a little light on the tip of my finger. Can you imagine that? Just a little light right there. And you would see that little light. What you would see is what you see on the screen. My hand is describing a wave going up and down. Positive, negative. Positive, negative. You got it? Do you understand that? Good. Whew. That was hard. Okay, now, let's go on. Here's what happens when you square. You see, this curve represents, this is what happened on Sunday, this is Monday, this is Tuesday, this is Wednesday, Thursday, Friday it went down again. This week it was all negative, bad market on that week. This week was all, so each of these represents the value of the market at a given day, okay? Got it? Now that's possibility wave. That's what happens when you square. When you square, there are no negatives anymore. Let me show you what that looks like. See, here's the red line represents the wave, but notice when I square every point on this line, when it's positive, I just get a bigger value. When I square every point on this line, I get a positive value. because minus times minus is positive. So this represents all these positive humps are probabilities. They're all above the line, okay? That's called squaring. Do you understand? Think about it. I'm going to go on. Here's another curve, okay? And now here's the double slit experiment that you just saw. Here, positive and negative, as you saw before. Squaring produces that. We know that. Here is this curve again. And now I'm going to add another curve to it. Red and blue. And I want you to watch something. See, I can move that here. And notice that now it's not quite where it was before. There's a distance here. To move it back. This difference, this is what we call phase. The difference between one curve and the other. Don't worry about that so much. Now, if I add these two squares, first of all, let me go into something else first. How does observation change anything? Let me explain that first. Here's one possibility, squared. Now, what happens when something gets squared? You saw what happens when something gets squared. Before, it was a wave of possibilities. When something gets squared, it's positive, one or the other. It's 50-50, and then it's one or the other. That's called squaring, okay? That's what the squaring represents. When you see this, and you know, now from this point onward, don't worry about all that stuff. All that's math. Just remember these symbols. When you see this sign, think wave or think possibility. When you see this sign, think particle or probability. Okay? That's all you have to remember. I'll be showing this again, so don't worry about it. Now, if you add two possibilities that are out of phase with each other, like in the double slit experiment, if you add these two up, what do you think you get? You're right, nothing, zero. Cancels out, cancelado. Okay? But, here's possibility wave one. If you square that, you get this. Here's possibility two, which if you didn't square, you'd have this. You square that, you get this. If you add up these two probabilities, you just get more probability. So adding probabilities gives you more. Adding possibilities can give you anything. So when you're working at the level of what's already out there, the material world, the world of marbles and particles, then you're dealing with the land of probability. You're dealing with what's already out there. You may not know it yet, but it's already out there. When you're dealing with the land of possibilities, where things vibrate, that's when you can create. That's the level where your creativity lies. Now, this is all very abstract, and we're going to get it down to earth very shortly, but please just bear with me for a while. I realize some of this might be difficult, but then again, gambling is something we all understand. In roulette, we have 38 slots on the roulette wheel. I know, I study roulette. There are two green slots. Okay? And there are 18 red slots and 18 black slots. Okay? And you know the croupier sends the ball around and it lands somewhere. This is how the world looks to us after the mind has observed each possibility. This is what you mean by squaring and then adding. You see that the odds of getting, say, the color red is around 47%. There are a few places where the wheel, because the wheel is a little bit odd, it goes down to zero, but don't worry about that. It's mostly staying together. So when you add up a whole bunch of probabilities, you start to get something which is starting to look like a real thing. On the other hand, when you're adding things which are possible, but not probable yet, you can get them to cancel out. And when you do that, if you look at the world before you observe any possibility, you can get a wholly different possibility wave that when you square that, it gives you a very different picture. So I just want you to be acquainted with the notion. Don't worry about the details. I just want you to be acquainted with the notion that everything depends on whether you're working at the level of possibilities or at the level of probabilities. And what you need to learn, and what I hope to teach you as we go on, is what the difference is and how you can work with that difference. So I'm just giving you the abstraction first, and then we'll go into some examples. Okay, probability curves, square and then add, or add and then square. The differences you get between those two. Don't worry about the details of this. A quantum leap is a jump from what is to what can be without going in between, like the cube. Is this just an optical illusion? Okay. Yes, it is an optical illusion. However, that's only a label that we give to something that changes like this cube changes. We call that an optical illusion. That's a name we give to it. But the question really isn't so much about that. It's about what you are experiencing. See, one of the things we tend to do is when we have an experience which is outside our normal range of experience, is we label things like optical illusion. Once we label it and put it in a box, we no longer have to deal with it. Oh, he's crazy. Put him in a box. Don't have to deal with him anymore. Oh, that's sad that that person died, but put him in a box. Bury him. Don't have to deal with it anymore. We label it, got it, put away, don't deal with it anymore. So many times in medicine, we label illnesses. We say, oh, that's schizophrenia, as if we know what the hell that meant. No one really knows what schizophrenia is. We look at the brain and say, well, the brain, ba-da-dee, da-da-do, da-da-wah, dee-da-bop, boop-bop, boop-bop, boop-bop. That's it. That explains it. No, it doesn't explain anything. Just a label we attach so that we can deal with it. Okay? A woman says, I have a pain in my sciatic. How does she even know she has a sciatic? Her doctor told her she has a sciatic. So therefore, oh, that's pain, that's your sciatic. Oh, okay, now I know it's that. So now I will deal with it as that. I'll take medication to deal with it as that. And then we get caught in the box game, where as long as we got a label, we know what to deal with. When you get at the level of vibration, you're now dealing with the objective reality of that's of this is of that. I know what they are. I don't have to deal with them anymore. We're at the level of plus and minus. We're a level of vibration where all the possibilities are still present. And we haven't decided yet whether that's a sciatic or maybe that's a nose hair going crazy in my brain. It's neither, let me try to explain about what it is in terms of how it appears. It's neither not in matter nor in matter. Because if it was one or the other, then a distinction has been made. So it's got to be something which
cannot fit into any kind of compartmentalized thinking. To some, we call this God. To some, we call it soul. To some, we call it the mind of God. To some, we call it the universal consciousness. To some, we call it the Buddha nature. It has many, 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 many names. None of them describe what it is.
See, I'm talking to your internalness. I'm talking to something that's much bigger than you presently think you are. I'm not talking to you just as your little tiny. See, you're not really here as little tiny bodies because that odds are too much against that. So I'm talking to something much, much more profound. That's where we're going. That's what we're trying to get in touch with. You knew it when you first were born. You knew it when you first came into the world. But then your mama and your papa and your grandpapa and your grandmama and the people around you and your brothers and your sisters, they all told you what a blank you were. Fill in the blank with anything you wish. And you bought it hook, line, and sinker. So we want to get in touch with something else, something that's beyond even the 7 billion years that we have to exist on this planet before our sun decides to become old age and go red giant and explode out of existence. Something else has to happen. Some of you may say, oh, well, why do suns do that? Why does it have to go red giant? Why does it have to do it? I don't want it to do that. Well, I want to tell you something. Red giants are the birthplace of matter. That's where the matter, see, you're made of star stuff. All the matter that you're made of comes out of stars. Dying stars gave birth to the material that you're made of. There's not a soul, there's not a molecule, there's not an atom, and there's not an electron in this building that hasn't been born on the surface of a dying red star somewhere. Some of you came from the early beginning of the galaxy. Not galaxy, of the whole soul, of the universe itself. You got here when the Big Bang occurred. Some of you are Big Bangers. So Earthians, solar systems, Big Bangers, whoever you are, the odds are against you for being here. So if you're here, something special is going on. Something's going on that we may not have taken into account. That's what we want to find out. The world is made of possibilities. Possibilities are waves of vibration. And those are the things which, when added together, can interfere with each other to produce something new. When you square those, they become probabilities. Those are something old. They're the things which we call the material world. They're the things which we normally deal with in our everyday world. We use probabilities all the time. And it's amazing how often they come up in our everyday life. I mean, they come up in very surprising ways. But we use them all the time. If I had more time with you, I would give you some more examples of how surprising probabilities are. But this is your role as an observer creator. You bring your experience into existence. You bring things out. And you use these basic 3 rules. 1, recognize that possibilities vibrate. Plus and minuses. Squaring makes things happen. Getting things all square means you've assigned a probability to everything in your life so that you know that when you pick up the toothbrush, put on the toothpaste, put it in your mouth this way, brush this way, that tooth is going to get clean. You've been doing that enough time. You know without thinking that if I put my foot here, then here. This is all a probability game. It looks like it's pretty certain, but there's always a possibility of something happening that I can't. So what I'm trying to say to you is that, there are are things in life that are probabilistic. And you don't always know that by doing something one way, it's going to continue going the same way. Stuff happens. Probabilities can shift or change. And we're always dealing with probabilities, and this is what we do when we learn something new. We shift probabilities. But what I want to get you to is the shifting of possibilities before that even takes place. You choose when to square, which means that you choose at the fundamental level of your vibrational existence which possibilities you want to enhance and which ones you don't. Well, let's start from a scientific point of view. If there is anything called an I, a yo, it's got to be in the body. Where else could it be? It certainly isn't to my left or to my right. Got to be in the body. So let's investigate. Where is his true nature, his I-ness? Where is his I? Let's investigate. We'll put electrodes, we'll paste things on his body, we'll test. We'll find out where the indicates he is. But, wait a minute, she says, does he have a true nature? Does he have an I? Maybe this is a robot we're looking at. How do we know what it does? Is this really a human being with an I inside? And maybe it's just some artificially designed human being that only looks like a human but is a robot. How do we know what it really is? Does he have one? Well, let's look over here. No, let's look over there. Let's look here. Let's look there. Let's look everywhere. Can we find out where he is? Who are you? Who are you? Where are you? What in all heaven's name are you? From our research, we found out something very surprising. Although there are lots and lots of stuff going on inside of a body, which we can measure with all kinds of really good equipment, many processes going on inside, and we have a pretty good idea as to what those processes are, even identifying them and so forth, what the blood is doing, what the nerves are doing, all of that stuff. None of them, not a single one of them, or a composite group of them, or all of them in any sense, make up anything we can identify or call yo, or call an I. This is how we look at our bodies. We only see the mechanicalness of the body. We see all the things that it does, but we have never found the driver. If a driver were suddenly to step out of the body and say, "Hi, I'm your I-ness," you would be shocked. What we're trying to do right now is identify and label our perceptions. We're going to make let's say, a distinction between what's in here, what's out there. We're going to try to see if we can find where the dividing line is between in here and out there. Say to yourself, I am in here. Can we find out what's going on in that hand? What's going on inside of you, Mr. Hand? Let's ask some really good scientific questions about what's going on in here. Question, is it dark in where you are? Is it dark in where you are? Yes? No? Is it gloomy and sad? Is it pitch black and inky? Is it all cramped and is it as restricted and pokey and biddy boo wah wah? as other people seem to think it is, or as I look at other people and think they are? Isn't it obvious that none of that really applies? That you can't really see? You can't say it's dark. You can't say it's light. You can't say it's gloomy. You can't say it's happy. It's just not any of the above. You can't say any of that. These are all ridiculous kinds of questions you can ask. In fact, anytime you ask about in here, you have no answers because your experience doesn't take you there. Now, assuming that's the case, one would conclude, based upon logic, that since I can't experience anything going on in here, there's nothing going on in here. Ergo, ain't nobody home in here. Mi casa es su casa. Nobody here. You're not inside your body. You're not you're not your hand, you're not this. You're not any of that stuff. Those are all experiences. Yes, you can have those, but you're not those. When you identify, when you give a name to, when you say that is, what you've just done is squared. You've just created matter, inertia, a name, a label. That is this. I am that. I am this. I am that. When you do that, you're squaring and you're making things probable. You're moving into the land of matter and inertia. Even though they may not even be there, you're doing that with your mind. That's the squaring possibility. That's what you do when you square. Okay, good. Hold it in one of your hands and look in the mirror. And lo and behold, there is your head. Right there in the palm of your hand. What the heck is it doing out there? Oh, if that's my head, that's really weird because it's out there in my hand. That is very bizarre. This really is strange. What the heck is that thing out there? In fact, what is that thing out there? Who is that? Who's that geezer? Who is that? Who is that? What? I'm so glad I don't have to look at that every day. You have to look at it. That's your problem. It ain't mine. Begin to think about it as that's out there, that thing called a head. Oh, you say, no, it isn't. I have a camera. I can take a picture of the head. Where do you hold the camera when you take a picture of your head? Out there, right? Out there that's where it is. That's where you get it. That's where you capture that head. It's out there, man. It's out there. It is where it is, out there. Okay? Get in touch with that. When you go home tonight and you're about to go to bed or walk around the room, in fact, right now, if you can, stand up with your head out there, okay? Okay? That's your sun, by the way. You're now a solar system. That's your sun out there. Oh, that's my son. I love him. I love him. Okay, and now rotate in space. Keep your eye on your sun and turn around like this. Notice as you do this, you don't get dizzy. On present evidence, what is turning? Certainly not my head and my sun. The room is going around me. See or no? conclusion of this story, the whole truth about yourself and how you've just found out. Instead of being the self, the little thing that you always have been told you were or are, you've now discovered that your essential nature is nothing at all. No thingness. Certainly conscious and alive and all those words you can attach to because you're having an experience, but even those words don't describe that experience. They're not even those things. But yet, there's a vitality. I don't know what words to use. It's poetry. It's magic. It's vitality. You're that emptiness. You're the totality of everything you see around you. And every particular thing that lies in between. So just consider that.
Something may occur to you in all of this, and that is, here you are in a body, in a universe which has dimensions of space and time and matter and energy, and now you've discovered your purpose. And you think, okay, what am I to do next? Don't worry about anything. Once you've discovered your purpose, you and the universe are suddenly one, and let the universe take over from this point. You don't have to worry about anything. When you are having the experience of loving another, this is the most common way. It may be the only way for some of us to ever have this experience. That's very sad. Because what you've done is you've transformed your own self-love, your own inner love, the love of this presence, onto another. What you're experiencing is that love, but you've transferred it onto another. Now, if you do that, then, and you forget that this the inner being that's you're dealing with, then you expect of the other certain behaviors to occur in such a way that you can feel that again. And it never, 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 never works. Never. Because that isn't where the love is. It has nothing to do with the other person. It has to do with you. And if you understand that and deal with it, you have the power to not only love another, but you will be loved by everybody in the universe because you're walking love. You don't even have to be a nice guy. You could be a complete, you could be like me, grumpy and loud and doesn't matter. If you're coming from that point of view, people sense it. Love itself, this kind of presence, this sense of this presence, cannot have any conditions because we're dealing with something which is not matter, not energy, not space, not time. It isn't any of those. So how can you condition it? How can you label it? How can you box it up? That unity consciousness, because it's so unthinkable, is nevertheless the fundamental ground of being out of which everything arises. Because what we're dealing with here is all of eternity as experienced. And experiencing limits eternity. It has to, because that's how anything that is created comes into being. You can't have creation without a limit. And you can't have the present moment without creation.